Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to hand it over to Councillor Peart in a moment, who is going to chair this meeting. But thank you for coming tonight to learn more about this project. I'm looking forward to hearing what your questions are, and we'll have some questions certainly, and hearing more details about this. And I'd like to introduce members of the administration that are here tonight. So we have Dave Lapointe, who is our acting Director General, and Frederic No, who is our Director of Urban Planning, and Maître Denis Ferland, who is our City Clerk. So I will now hand it over to Councillor Peart, and just also a welcome to Councillor Aronson, who is here tonight, who is the local councillor for the district where 1 to 3 Hillside is located. Donc, c'est à vous, Monsieur Peart.
Thank you, Madame la Mairesse. So I also welcome you to the evening and taking some time out from almost wintry December day. I will just present the agenda just so you have an idea of the framework we'll be following for the evening. The purpose of this public consultation is to present the specific project at 1 to 3 Hillside, which was the subject of a first draft resolution adopted on November 21st at our council meeting. And the purpose of this meeting is to hear from anyone who wishes to speak. Monsieur No, from the Director of Urban Planning, will be presenting the project. Maître Ferland from Legal Services will also present the legal process that is involved with a public consultation and a SCAOPI process, as is this, which is potentially subject to a referendum, and he will go through the steps which are attached to that. So that will be the following steps: the legal process, and of course then there will be a question and comment period at which you'll have the opportunity to come to the microphone, identify yourself, and to pose your question to us, or potentially to the developer or the presenter who is in the room, or to the administration as well. Please note that any comments and questions that you do pose to us will be forwarded to City Council prior to the second reading of the draft resolution. And after that, we will close the meeting and conclude the session. Okay. So to start, we will have the presentation by Mr. No, our Director of Urban Planning.
Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir tout le monde. Je m'appelle Frédéric No, Director of the Urban Planning Department. I will be presenting you this project for the immovable of 13 Hillside Avenue. The document is in English, but in the next hours, both French and English documents will be available online. So, the project is related to 13 Hillside. First of all, il s'agit d'un PPCMOI ou d'un SCAOPI. SCAOPI is for Specific Construction, Alteration, or Occupancy Proposal for an Immovable. It is a bylaw, so this is a way to allow a project to be realized. It's an exceptional measure, particularly adapted for large-scale projects or projects with complexities such this one. An approach that allows for negotiation to require specific conditions that could be met for the project to proceed. Any specific project must be consistent with the objective of the master plan. And finally, what is a SCAOPI? It allows the project to be submitted to a citizen approval process. So where is located 13 Hillside? You know the place. It's at the corner of Hillside and Hillside. It is close from Westmount High School, the St. Margaret's CHSLD, and the athletic field. It's on the residential area, well served by public transportation and close to the Maisonneuve Boulevard bicycle path. It's a part of a block where the floor height varies between 3 and 8 stories. So the usual bylaw that is used to allow a project is the zoning bylaw. So the zoning for this immovable is the zone R6-34-14, which allows a maximum of 3 floors, 35 feet height, a maximum site coverage of 65%, and a maximum floor area ratio of 2. If we compare with the neighbors, which are the zone ending by 11 and by 10, both zone has a maximum story height of 6 and a maximum height of either 75 or 65 feet. The maximum site coverage is the same at 65%, and the maximum floor area ratio is higher with the maximum of 3. And by the way, this zone that ends with 14, and which is the subject of tonight's meeting, has only 2 immovable. So there's the 1-3 Hillside and the 11 Hillside. This is a character area. Character area is a zone with a similar architectural distinctions. So the character area is the number 34. And on résume la zone en disant que c'est a majority of building with residential in nature. Most are high-rise building with floor ranging from 4 to 12 stories. The Hillside area was formerly home to buildings of an industrial nature, and the main material is brick. So this is the existing building, which used to be an industrial occupancy. As you probably know, it is staying vacant for several years. The building is 4-story high. The site coverage is at 89%. And the building is located directly on the front lot lines with 0 feet setback. All of this is under acquired rights. So the project now. Of course, it's a residential development that is proposed with 32 housing units. There's a 6th floor that is proposed. I would say 5, but the upper floor is counted as a floor. But if you count, you see 5 floor, but there's a technical floor at the top that is calculated as 1. But as you see on the rendering, it's not really visible. We will see it on another page. It's a brick masonry, and it's targeted to be a LEED Silver certification. This is another view with the setbacks related to its direct neighbor. And the left and the right picture are the evolution between July 2022 and September 2022. The first proposition was 5 feet closer than the final proposition to the right. So it's a modification that was asked to the promoter and was in fact modified. And 6 feet 1 inch from the front lot line that was also modified between the two propositions. So you can see here the 6th floor I was talking that is barely visible. Still again. The view from Hillside Lane. So this board shows everything that is not in concordance with the actual zoning bylaw. So everything that is in red is not in accordance with the zoning bylaw. So as you read before, the zoning for this zone, it's allowed to a maximum of 3 stories. The project is 6 stories proposed, including the rooftop structure. The height, which is a maximum of 35 feet, is proposed at 76 and so. The FAR is allowed to be maximum 2. It's proposed 3.66. The side coverage is allowed 65, proposed 83. The use is conform, residential. And for the setbacks, the uncovered space to the front, the regulation asks for 10 feet. It's proposed to be 6 feet 1 inch, and the underground level would be at 0. The stairways would be at 8 inches from the front lot line. And there's no setback required for Hillside Lane, and that's what they suggest. The uncovered space to the rear, it's required to be 35 feet, and it's proposed from a distance varying from 8 feet to 11 feet. The vegetation area, front yard and rear yard, well, the rear yard is 60 minimum. The proposition is 41, 42. And for the front yard, the requirement is 70. It's proposed to be 63. The width of the driveway to the garage is required to be 10 feet. It's proposed over it, 18 feet proposed. So that is everything that is the object of tonight's presentation. This is what is asked from the promoter to be allowed. Everything you see in red. The site plan. So the footprint, even though it's not in conformity with the actual bylaw, it's smaller than the actual building. So now it's 89% of the site use. It would be reduced to 83. The sidewall is moved back to provide more clearance with the neighboring building, which is currently 5 feet 8 inches from the property line. And the front wall facing Hillside Avenue is set back 6 feet 1 inch from the front lot line to create a better integration on the street, especially with the neighboring building. That was a change that was made from the first to the second draft. About the density, the project includes 32 large, which means 2 or 3 bedroom units, which has the potential to attract new families to the area, which is a good thing, because we are close from the athletic field and the high school. The project fits well into the area, according to the urban planning department, which includes many large-scale residential buildings. And finally, the location of the sector, close to parks, green space, local service, bicycle paths, bus line, high school, is well adapted to a medium density project as proposed. About the architecture, the building takes up to the industrial language of the existing building, which has a symbolic value in the area. The materiality, particularly the brickwork, is consistent with the surrounding built environment and with the character area. About the impacts on the urban environment, about the traffic. The traffic study submitted shows that the impact on traffic would be very low. The project will not affect the traffic, according to the study. About heat island, the project integrates a green roof as well as numerous planting boxes, which is not existing now. The material used for the paving stones, both on the roofs and on the ground, are light in color with a high albedo, which helps reduce heat islands. And finally, about the noise, the mechanical equipment will be integrated into the building in the basement and in a structure outside the roof, the technical 6th floor. About sun study, There's a sound study that shows that the project does not affect the adjacent buildings more than the existing building. And finally, the project elements consistent with LEED principles. An evaluation grid was completed by Ecohabitation, showing that the project is aiming for LEED Silver certification with the potential for LEED Gold, which will reduce the building's ecological footprint. And by the way, about the LEED project, we cannot have any guarantee until the project is constructed. So that's why we're talking about aiming for LEED Silver. Additional information, the applicant is in contact with Hydro-Westmont for the relocation of the overhead transformer with on-ground transformer. It's one of the, maybe one of the last one, but there's really few remaining in Westmont of those above ground transformers, so it will be necessary to put them on ground. An agreement must be reached between Hydro-Westmont and the applicant for the relocation. The first draft of a resolution. So this is a list of elements I showed you on the grid, which is not in conformity with the actual zoning bylaw. So it's the height of 6th floor, the height of 77 feet, the FAR of 3.77, maximum site coverage of 83%, the setbacks that are different from the regulation, the front steps, the minimum of planted areas, and the width of the driveway. Everything is on the first draft adopted on November 21st. And there were conditions. That's one of the good things of this regulation. We can ask for conditions. So there were 3 conditions. The first one was that an agreement between the applicant and the city regarding the relocation of the transformers be finalized prior to the issuance of the building permit, and that in the event that the transformers are relocated on the immovable, that a basement clearance be provided to allow for the installation. If necessary, the modified basement plans must be submitted before the building permit is issued. This is technical, but it means that if the relocation must be made into the building underground, it might be somewhere in the parking underground, but there's no difference for the architecture at all. So that's a possibility. The second condition is that the electrical chamber in the basement be arranged to accommodate the relocation of the Hydro-Westmont transformer as stated in condition 1. And finally, that evidence to the applicant's commitment to make best efforts to achieve Silver LEED certification be submitted prior to permit issuance. Madame la mairesse, j'ai complété ma présentation. On serait rendu maintenant au point numéro 3.
C'est Ferland.
Oui, merci, Madame la mairesse. Alors, je vais vous expliquer, je vais vous résumer brièvement le processus d'adoption, d'abord en français puis en anglais pour m'assurer que tout le monde comprenne. C'est un peu technique. Donc, la première étape a été l'adoption d'un premier projet de règlement par le Conseil. Cette étape s'est faite le 21 novembre dernier. Suite à l'adoption du premier projet de résolution, un avis public a été publié pour annoncer la présente assemblée de consultation. Suite à l'assemblée de consultation, il y aura l'adoption d'un deuxième projet de résolution par le conseil municipal avec ou sans changement. Le conseil peut tenir compte ou non des commentaires qui ont été formulés lors de l'assemblée publique. La date n'est pas encore déterminée. On va travailler sur ce projet de résolution. Suite à l'adoption du deuxième projet de résolution, il y aura un avis public qui sera publié sur notre site Internet notamment, lequel annoncera la possibilité pour les résidents des zones concernées, les zones contiguës et la zone dans laquelle se trouve le projet, de faire une demande pour que le projet soit soumis à l'approbation référendaire. Et ensuite, il y aura l'adoption de la résolution finale et le cas échéant, en fait, un processus référendaire qui sera entamé si on a assez de citoyens qui en font la demande. Alors, en anglais maintenant, the City Councils adopt the first draft resolution on November 21. A public notice was posting on the November 29 to announce this public consultation. And after this consultation, the council can adopt a second draft resolution with or without changes, depends on your commentary. After the adoption of the second draft resolution, there will be a public notice announcing the possibility for residents of the affected areas to request that the project be submitted to a referendum approval. If there's enough people who sign a petition, there will be a referendum approval. And finally, if there's no referendum, for example, the council can adopt the resolution. Alors, c'est ce qui, je pense, résume le processus d'adoption, Madame la mairesse.
Merci, Maître Ferland. Alors, on va débuter la période de question and comment period. I invite anybody who has any questions. You can come up to the microphone, identify yourself, and pose the questions. We're fortunate the representatives from the project are in the room, so they might be able to add some color as needed.
And any questions that are posed, we will share, will get relayed to the rest of council. That's not all of council, obviously, is here tonight. So they will be taken into consideration. Yeah. Mr. Martin.
Is on? Yes.
Yeah. So you have to just state your name, obviously, for the record.
Yes. So I'm Patrick Martin, 3166 The Boulevard. Stop me if I go on too long. I'm Irish. I can't be insulted by being told so. I've known this building since I was a little boy, and I lived on Kensington. I used to go down on my bicycle to the WAG, as it wasn't really called that then. The high school had not yet been built. I would take my bike through what is now the 4,300 apartment buildings. It was a farm owned by the Grey Nuns. I'm not 120 years old, but you know. So I've known the site for a long time. I've always admired that building because it was so eccentric and interesting. Later on, the high school got built in the 60s, I think it was, late 60s. And St. Margaret's Home, etc., got built where there used to be railway tracks. But I always felt that this building sort of anchored the look of the square, if you will, of the whole area. So I was very much hoping that whatever we did with this site would maintain that feeling, that look that it had 50 years ago and more. When I was on council 18 years ago or so, next door to the building was the old Caledonia Curling Club, where my mother used to curl. So I had visited that building. It came up for sale at one point. And we knew under Mayor Karen Marks, I'm telling this because maybe you don't know the history. Under Karen Marks, she obtained that the city might get first refusal if ever the building in question became available for some city use. So I thought at the time, well, if we had the Caledonia Curling Club next door, which was basically falling down, we could just demolish it for about $100,000 and we'd have a parking lot for whatever we did with the other building, with my dream being that it would be a swimming pool. But since then, I've had occasion to visit the building, both exterior and interior. Walking by one day, I saw some workers working, and I said, "Do you mind if I come in?" And they said, "Sure, come on in, take a look." And I can tell you that building is falling down. It's in terrible, terrible condition. It's be actually dangerous to continue it much longer. So I'm encouraging you to proceed as quickly as possible with approval of the project. I love the project. It really gives the feeling of what was there before. It respects the WAG. And I think exceptionally, they've gone out of their way to respect the neighbors from what I see. So it has my, for what it's worth, my encouraging remarks. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Do we allow?
We have a question there's a question online, apparently. But first, I think we would go to any more questions
in the room. Absolutely. Please introduce yourself in the microphone.
Yes, my name is Paul Cloutier. I'm a resident of Hillside. And well, I have to say this is a huge improvement over the previous project, the first project. And in the first project, we had concern because of the location of the garage door, and there was like a pathway that would go directly in our backyard where the fumes would come out. And I couldn't see on the small pictures on the plans if this had been addressed, but I was just wondering, what's the situation regarding the garage, and is it still, you know, riding into behind the backyards, or is the entrance really really close to the street, and so that the
has been recessed, you know.
yes.
Mugisha, can you show my screen, please?
Good evening. My name is Luciano Girlando, and I'm the developer of the project. So when we did the last modification to the project, we moved back two facade walls on the south side and on the west side, and also we recessed the garage door by approximately 12 feet. So now the entrance of the door is almost at the same level of the 11 Hillside.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they just go straight in, no cars riding.
No, and we also, there was a wall, a full wall on the side between the two property, and now there is an opening to allow people to see through the space, to see traffic coming in or out.
Okay,
And
and is there any kind of fence or for the garage? And
oh,
the back, or-
well, there is a small wall, and then there is a column, and then there is a big opening, as I said, to allow, you know, car on both sides to see how is the traffic.
Okay, I guess I will have to see pictures.
Oh, anytime we can. You have. Okay.
Okay, I see what you mean. So that means that thing here. This is okay.
So this was the brick road. It was all the way down. So now there is this opening. So yes, it's an open. The garage door is in the garage door. It's basically the same level of the story.
Please identify yourself. Thank you.
Hi, Bridget Addis from 11 Hillside. I just have a quick question. Just a little concerned about the proximity of those two garage doors. Because already just coming out of the garage at 11 Hillside is a challenge. People walk all the time. We have to make sure that, you know, we come out of this garage. But now the fact that an adjacent building has also a garage, I have my concerns is more about safety because we both condos have to turn right. I would think that maybe the developer might consider something just to avoid any potential accident between the cars that come out of that building and the cars that come out of our building. And it is an improvement in terms of the building itself because the other proposals were not, in my opinion, good for the area. So it does. And the only other comment I have is that personally, and it's just like, I'm not an architect, just visually, I just think it's a little too high because 11 Hillside is only 3 floors. And even if it's built like with those modifications, that building is just going to look like a monster. But that's just a personal opinion. I felt I should share it since I live at 11 Hillside. I love living there. Thank you.
Thank you for your commentary.
Can you see the door?
Go ahead.
Oh, so ahead.
No, after you. Just wanted to listen you first.
Mr. Yolanda, you wanted to add a comment to respond?
Can we see the? Okay. Il n'y a pas de problème. Ce que je peux dire en attendant, what I can say, maybe in French is easier for me if you don't mind. Donc la modification qui a été faite, le fait de reculer la façade a déjà aidé à la sécurité et à la visibilité des voitures. Ce qu'on fait aussi dans une situation pareille, c'est qu'on peut mettre des miroirs qui permettent au trafic de visualiser les entrées et les sorties des voitures. Il faut dire aussi que notre allée est nettement plus large que en fait que le règlement l'autorise. L'allée est 18 pieds, je crois bien, donc c'est beaucoup plus large et la pente est relativement douce. Je voudrais dire un mot aussi au sujet de la hauteur du bâtiment. Le bâtiment actuellement, si on tient compte du toit en dos rond qu'on a, il est presque la même hauteur que le bâtiment que nous allons construire. La hauteur en pied est presque la même chose. Et les études d'ensoleillement que nous avons effectuées démontrent que ça n'affecte pas du tout ni les voisins, ni la rue, ni quoi que ce soit. Je crois également qu'il est important de dire que les 2 étages qui ont été rajoutés avec des setbacks assez importants sur les 4 côtés. Et donc, en fait, je dirais quasiment qu'il y aura plus de soleil pour le 11 Hillside si on tient compte également du fait que nous avons reculé la façade de 5 pieds.
Merci, Mr. Yolanda. Une autre question? Another question? Comment?
Name is Ali, 11 Hillside, apartment 214. We live on the east side of our building, it's just facing the west side of the new construction. So we are impacted, highly impacted, by this project. So the first thing I just want to mention that our lady neighbor said that this building, as you gentlemen said, that it's higher than the zooming area. So it's supposed to be 3 floors, as I heard. So it's going to be 5 and more. So let's believe that the sun study is good, which somehow I thought it, I don't know, it's just my feeling. So still higher than it's supposed to be comparing our building. This is one of the questions. The second thing is the distance between the 2 buildings. I don't know the regulation, but at least they have to have the same setback that we have from the lot. Now it is not exactly the same distance. So maybe it has to be calculated. And if we are going to reconstruct that wall, so probably we have to that to in our consideration. And also there wouldn't be any privacy because our building, the way that it was built at that time, we have all big windows, and whoever is going to be on the other side has like a big view of our life. I mean, even we don't have any privacy or bedroom, to be honest with you. So, I mean, whatever is going to be considered as like a privacy of the resident of the like us, so it has to be considered. And also regarding to the sidewalk on the Hillside lane. So I know that Westmount City, is trying to enhance somehow all the sidewalks, and the sidewalks is very narrow. Now, if you are going to rebuild it, I had so many fights with the parents of the high school students because they park on the sidewalk. I called security so many times. Even I argue with them like every day because my son used to pass that sidewalk and always had this issue with the drivers who parking on the sidewalk. And the narrow sidewalk, it's going to be the same headache, I'm sure. And not only for my son, it's even people, the senior people, they go with wheelchair or, they need this is the minimum things that they need to have, like to go to, to the sidewalk. And also regarding the parking, this the parking door. So maybe the developer can push it to the middle of the building, and then there would be enough space between us. So if it is possible, I don't know how much change with the plan, but that would be an option. That's all. Thank you.
If I could maybe just jump in and address a couple of those points. Just want to be clear on the sidewalk. Sidewalk being narrow or not, whether the building is set back or not, we only construct on the public domain. So even if the building was pushed in from the sidewalk wouldn't be any wider because we can only build on our land, which is right on and the building's built right up to that line. Your comment about the views into the neighbors, you got to remember it works both ways, right? If you can see into theirs, they can see into yours. So it's 25 feet, I believe. That's the distance in between the buildings, which is not significant, especially in an urban context. It's just a matter of scale and proportion.
So sorry, add something here. So if we look into the other building on the other side, the distance is huge and enough to have some privacy. But with this construction, with this new building, there wouldn't be any privacy. Even we cannot sit on the balcony because it's too close. I mean, even for the safety, I think if there is an earthquake, so those two buildings are very close. So I don't know if we consider any safety of the residents or in case of any accident, this kind of accident.
If such was a constraint, I think we would have problems all over downtown core.
Well, it could happen. And who is going to be responsible? Okay, thank you.
Mayor? My name is Catherine Ernst. I'm a resident for the past 35 years on St. Catherine Street West. And I've just followed, I think, this project's development over 3 years. And I think really the developers made a humongous effort to try to appease all the constraints. And I think it's time we act. The building, as you said, is falling apart. It's more dangerous and a horrible eyesore in our neighborhood. While this project is really elegant, it respects the history, the look. The height is much lower than the building in front at 8 feet, the one across the street at 12 feet. So I think we really have a nice building addition to our community. So I urge you to please give it the go ahead it needs.
Thank you for your comment.
I'm another resident. So just going back to what my neighbor. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm another resident. So my neighbor just.
Sorry,
William.
We still need you to identify yourself for the record.
I'm William from Unit 112.
William
Chan.
Thank you.
And so I'm right below Nima. And just to go back to his question about like the setback, there, in terms of privacy, there's not just like visibility. They can see, we can see them, but there's also sound privacy. So if if we're sitting on the balcony and the other side are sitting, they can hear everything that we're saying too. So I don't know, like I'm not a scientist or anything, but I don't know how much sound travels from one side to the other to the point that it makes everything clear when you're talking. So that's one concern I have. The other concern is, have you considered how like the construction when it starts, how it's going to affect our foundation? Is there going to be any compensation or anything like that if there's damage to our building?
So with respect to the measures that the city takes and is responsible for, peut-être Monsieur No pouvait commenter sur nos procédures quand on fait la suivi de construction comme projet comme ça, and if the developer wants to comment on any of the mitigation measures that they have planned for the construction, because I'm sure they anticipate working in a built environment. They know the constraints of functioning in that kind of environment. So I suspect between the two of the groups, you'll be able to get the answer that you're looking for.
Yes, what I can add, this project is no different than in any other project. So the promoter must not create prejudice to the other properties. So it's no different. So he is liable for his construction. He can attest, but it's no different than any other project. And we have lots of projects in Westmount and in Montreal in general that are twin house or twin buildings attached to each other. So it's not exceptional to have such close buildings together. So the promoter is liable as any other project for the integrity of, for instance, the 11 Hillside.
My question.
Sorry, perhaps maybe if Mr. Girlando, if you wanted to add some color or some nuance to that particular question.
Yes, I would like just to address the gentleman that mentioned about the setbacks, and to say that we try as much as possible to satisfy everybody, because obviously on one side the idea was to keep the style, the architecture as much as possible of the ancient building into a new project. So we could not relocate all the walls, or it will have completely changed the nature of the new project, as in fact we would like to keep the same architecture and to be seen as a restoration. And the fact that we make this setback obviously is a compromise. And also you have to today, it's an empty building, is an abandoned building, is a dangerous building, but one day someone will build and you will have neighbors inevitably. So, I think that we found a good compromise right now.
Okay. Just to answer your question, hi, my name is Maya Gerlando. I'm also with DDO Builders. I just want to answer your concern regarding the construction. We always do a pre-construction inspection. So before we start anything, we're going to inspect everything. And in that way, if ever there's any damages, we'll be liable and we will fix anything that happens. So you don't have to worry about that. This is part of our processes in any construction we do. So don't have to worry.
Sorry, what buildings privacy you want to add some?
Well,
because from where we are,
yes.
Even looking at the wall right now, and 5 feet doesn't make a difference. Like if I speak like this, the other side is going to hear me.
Well, I can't, unfortunately, the building is where it is. And it's actually, the perspective I would take is that when you purchased, your unit, you knew where the wall was, and it's actually going to be improved on,
Yeah, that's true, but I didn't know that there would be a condo project there. Either wasn't supposed to be.
Well, it's a residential zoning. So it's
it's an industrial building, but it's a residential zoning,
So
so.
back then it was military owned, so I saw military trucks and people, like personnel back then. So no, who would have thought that it would be sold like twice after that, I think at least, right? So that's the thing. You get, again, too much like visibility and they can hear you. So I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think 5 feet makes a difference unless it's the 5 feet and then there's no balcony on that side.
There is no
There's
balcony.
no windows, I mean, but there's no balcony.
So-
there's big windows.
So there's going to be no balconies on that side. There's going to be terraces on the ground, but there's going to be no balconies, so that we didn't want it to be too close. So that was one of the things we actually took into consideration in the comments that we've received, and we pushed the facade back. So I think there's, we really tried to listen and improve the first plan we submitted based on the feedback we've received.
We suggested 5 windows. If it is
But
possible.
we have that there will be on the property line, there will be bushes and trees. So I really don't believe that it will be a major problem at all.
Are there any more questions in the room? Madam, I think you had a comment or a question, whichever.
Hi, my name is David Cataves. I live at 314 11 Hillside. And I'm happy that you shared a little bit more information about the development and the kind of thoughts behind that. And as somebody who is a concerned resident, just in terms of the privacy and the light, I was just wondering if you could shed a little bit more light on the kind of what went into the study of, why 5 feet and how the light will actually be impacted, if any, like to give a little bit more detail. It's hard to read from kind of pictures and PowerPoints. So
Actually, if you wish, we can have a presentation. We have a presentation for your representative of the syndicat several months ago. If you wish, we can organize something to have you to give you more detail.
It was previous plan. We didn't have presentation.
Yeah.
There was no communication after.
Anytime.
To answer your question, we said back 5 feet, setting back more would impact too much that apartment, because we have elevators, and if we push it back, we cannot have a 2-bedroom apartment. So, we have to also respect the layout and the apartment that will be there in the future, or else, we cannot make a terrible design for the person that has that apartment. So it has to be a compromise in, moving the wall, but at the same time, we need to still have an interesting layout, even though we reduced it significantly. But we still have to have a nice living space. And if not, we were not able to have a 2-bedroom apartment, and we were not able to have a comfortable living. So that was
Maybe I could just ask a follow-up question to that. The placement of that wall, having moved it 5 feet, where does that land in relation to the existing wall that's there right now? Well, there's the building stands as it is, and they're looking, these residents are looking at a blank wall right now. Is it on that, is it same position at the blank wall? Is it to the east of the current blank wall, or is it to the west of the current blank wall?
We gave them more space, so we definitely went east, right?
Right.
They have an extra 5 feet from like the current wall, and then we moved it away from their building and actually.
That's what I wanted to make clear, is that the proposed situation is an improvement upon the existing situation.
The space is very nice backyard with trees, and I believe that it will be, very interesting for the people having a view on that side.
And just to follow up on that point, had the building been able to be restored in its current state, then that wall would have windows in it, which would be in effect 5 feet closer to the neighbors, having not reconstructed the building. I mean, isn't that the baseline you need to compare it against, and not the. No, the point I'm making is if the building as is was renovated as is without changing the footprint, bedrooms were inserted onto that wall, that blank. But there would be windows. There would be windows punched in the blank wall. There's no scenario where there wouldn't be windows. No, I agree. I'm saying that my point I'm making is that their proposal is better than is more advantageous to you than the default position would have been, having just punched holes into the existing wall.
Charles Savard, 11 Hillside. Je voulais juste savoir des précisions par rapport à la luminosité, étant donné qu'on parle d'un presque 6 étages de haut. Vous aviez dit dans votre présentation au niveau des études qui avaient été faites qu'il n'y avait pas de modification au niveau de la luminosité, mais là, présentement, on est à 4 étages. Donc là, je voulais juste savoir des précisions par rapport à ça. Parce qu'on parle de presque 6 étages avec le partie de la ventilation, j'imagine.
Alors, actuellement, le bâtiment est à peu près dans les 58 pieds, si je ne me trompe pas. Les 2 étages, il y a 5 étages.
Pardon, M. Galando, pour le bénéfice de tout le monde qui sont à distance, ce serait mieux que si vous parlez au microphone. Merci.
Donc, l'immeuble aura 5 étages plus un appentis. Donc, les 2 derniers étages, donc il y a 3 étages qui ont la dimension dont on a parlé. Je vais montrer sur l'écran. Voilà. Voilà. Donc, vous avez 3 étages qui font cela. Et ensuite, les 2 derniers étages ont des marges de recul plus importantes sur les 4 côtés. Donc, l'appentis a encore des marges de recul encore plus importantes. L'étude d'ensoleillement démontre qu'il n'y a aucun changement pour le nombre d'étages. Pratiquement, évidemment, il faut faire une amélioration, mais ça ne change pas la quantité de soleil que vous avez maintenant. Par contre, le fait de reculer le mur, ça vous donne plus d'air et probablement plus de lumière réfléchie. Parce qu'inévitablement, il y aura plus de lumière qui va passer entre les 2 bâtiments.
Peut-être, M. Orlando, ça serait avantageux de souligner le trajet du soleil, parce que le fait que le soleil, ça commence dans... Non, je sais, mais pour ceux et celles dans la salle.
Donc ici, c'est est. Donc, le bâtiment est situé pratiquement sur le trajet du soleil. Et dans est-ouest. Donc, cette partie du bâtiment, ce mur-là, est de toute façon totalement cachée par le bâtiment existant. Et je crois que le fait de reculer le mur va quand même améliorer la quantité de lumière qui va arriver sur votre mur.
Si vous me permettez, je pense qu'il y a quelqu'un qui a posé une question online. There's an online question. I don't know who has that online question. Monsieur Samuel? Ou...
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Claudette Stecker. I'm a resident of 11 Hillside, and I have a couple of concerns and questions. I guess my main question is, how does this building benefit the current residents of the area? And for those of you that don't live in the area, this area is comprised of many different, people that are elderly, children, high schoolers, dog walkers, community garden attendees, high schools and other schools, because that fairgrounds and that building or that area is not just restricted to Westmount High School. And so I don't understand how adding 32 living units to a space that has always been public and has never had housing or people living in it is going to not adversely affect the area. And I guess that's a question for our councilman, but I don't see the benefit to it. And I understand you cannot stop construction, and I understand that there is, money and tax involved, but I don't understand how doubling the existing zoning is going to benefit the area. And I also don't understand why we need to increase the car presence on that road and also decrease the light presence on that road, because the sidewalks are already hazardous during the winter, and the traffic is already horrible during school because you have hundreds of cars coming down there to pick up students for elementary and for high school. So I don't understand how this isn't going to be an impact to the traffic and to the light on that property.
Should I answer?
I think it's addressed. I think you've already answered the lights question in your previous response, but perhaps she didn't hear that response. So maybe you just want to reiterate that. And then as for the other question in terms of the 32 units, which I guess is the similar size to 11 Hillside, which is 32 units as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to ask me the question, who benefits, my quick answer would be the 32 families that are moving in. The construction isn't necessarily just to serve the people who live in the neighborhood; it's to serve the future residents of the neighborhood. And in the same way that many residents moved into a curling club a decade ago, this project is coming along, and there will be new residents here as well. It's not out of scale with the other towers that are on this block. Traffic will be slightly impacted, but it will adjust. In a small property, that has 32 units, the coming and going of cars is punctual. It's not a steady stream. I don't know. I probably haven't answered all your questions, but I think the challenge with these public consultations is that it only draws the people who live in the neighborhood, and the people who are the future residents never get a chance to sit and ask us questions because they're not here. So it can be a little bit imbalanced in the feedback that we get, and change can be a little challenging.
And I understand that, but have we learned nothing from COVID? Do we need to have more? Do we need to have less space? Do we need to have less light? Do we need to have less access to sidewalks and outdoor area? I'm not saying that, the building is a heritage building and it sadly has been allowed to disintegrate, but why the need for 32 housing units? If you look at Metcalf and Hillside, those were 4 townhouses that went up. It did not have a severe impact on the neighborhood or the parking. This building is going directly across from the high school, and it's going directly across from a community garden, from a track, from a dog park. There's and 2 elderly, 1 hospice, 1 Kensington Gardens. The amount of elderly and children traffic on those roads makes it a pedestrian safety corridor. And to increase a building that has had no residential units to 32, to me, is negligent, because you are endangering the people that walk and live in that area on a daily basis. And I don't care what the light studies say. I don't care what the impact of traffic is. Go live there and go walk there when high school is picking up and when elementary school lets out and when the residents in the morning walk from Kensington and from St. Mary's and when the community garden is in full swing. You cannot get parking and you cannot go through that road. You know, so it's very upsetting to me as a resident, because I don't see how it's going to benefit. And yes, there is a need for housing, but there are plenty of places in Westmount that can also accommodate 32 housing units, not just the corner of Hillside, next to a school and across the street from a senior, you know, palliative care. And not to mention, there is an affordable housing component there. Those people do not have cars. They walk all the time. So it's just, to me, negligent and very disrespectful to the current area.
Well, we thank you for your comments. They have been heard and they're valid. We may be of a different opinion, but here we are. Do we have any further questions in the room? Any closing comments or?
I would just add a comment, and maybe the counselor for the district. Thank you all for coming. I know it's a very busy time of year, but it is important to keep this process all year is busy. So it is important to keep the process, but thank you for engaging, for giving your feedback. It's important. We will certainly relay it to the rest of the council members. There was one sitting at the back, but she has left now, and we will relay it as we make our decisions. But I also want to thank the architects who were here tonight to answer, especially the more technical questions about, the sunlight and the openings and where the balconies are going to be. And of course, that has a real direct impact on you. You're next to it. It's not fun to live next to a construction site. Construction starts and construction ends. But in the process, you will live next to that site. But what I can, if and when this project does begin, and I do think there is, when we talk about benefit to a neighborhood, adding 32 families to a neighborhood, in my opinion, in a light densification mode is a benefit to a building that's already existing in that area. But it is important to also understand, the rules and the bylaws that we have in terms of construction and impact. I know you had some questions about that, and that's certainly something that our inspectors follow very closely on any of these, on any construction site. And when you talk about the last question there was just addressing, building elsewhere. Westmount is a built city. It is there are not large swaths of vacant land, and we take our heritage conservation, our heritage preservation very, very seriously. And it's a rigorous process. Nobody who's been through the PAC process will tell you that it's there's no rubber stamp at the PAC process. And just like the developers of the building that you live in that developed that 32 unit building years ago, they went through that same process and likely would have been neighbors arguing against that development of that project. But we do have to see, long term. And I think, obviously, something as well that's important to note is the LEED certification, the goals for that. And we would really encourage you to meet those standards. And that is critical, because every step and every measure that we can take, we must take. We have reached that point in dealing with climate change issues. So I'll hand it over to your local city councillor, who is always available to hear your feedback as well. And it's important that we get it. Aaron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In closing, I did want to take a minute to thank everybody who's here tonight and has been engaged in this process. These types of consultations are designed to make sure that everybody is heard. Nevertheless, the problem with sharing a community is that we have to share. And so It's also one of the benefits. But the public consultation process is designed to make sure you have an opportunity to speak and that your comments are heard and your questions are heard, and for the developers to hear what they may be able to do to improve their project or lessen its impact. All of us must live together. We are a community. One of the nice things about being a community is that we share our streets, we share our space, we share this process. There are parts of this process and the possible coming renovation of this building, which may be unpleasant for those of us who live nearby it. And I'm with you on that. I live a couple blocks away. There will be an impact on all of us. So I urge you as you go forward, keep in mind that when homes we live in now were built, there were already residents who had to tolerate some change. And once that change passed, it became a normal part of our neighborhood. Like the mayor said, construction starts and construction ends. But the fact that you came out tonight to show how much you care about your community gives me confidence that if we can all keep temperature low, be respectful of each other, be listening to what we say to each other as neighbors. And remember, when this construction is over, we're all going to continue to live together. We're going to have a better community and a better city, a better neighborhood for all of us. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here tonight, to listen attentively, ask good questions, solid questions, ones that reflect the care for which that you show for your community. I encourage you, please, to continue in that spirit, to engage with each other and with the developers of this new project, and prepare to welcome the new neighbors who may one day move into the building next to you, and hopefully set the example of respectful, cordial, neighborly behavior so that we can all continue to enjoy the city together.
So on that note, stay tuned to our website where we will have all the information for upcoming dates for second reading, possibly of this. We'll share the information with council, the feedback, and then the steps that follow, obviously, if you choose to sign a registry and all of that process as well, because the local residents do have a lot of say in how this project moves forward. So
if you have any questions or concerns, the mayor, the council, and I, as a member of the council, and your representatives are here for you. Our email addresses are on the website. Please don't be shy. Contact us if you have any questions or concerns that you would like us to address. And
happy holidays.
Happy holidays.